everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael, and today I'm going to show you how to make cream cheese filled bagels. So we're going to start out with our water. So I've got a cup and a half of warm water now. This is between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. You definitely don't want it any hotter than that, because any hotter than 110 degrees Fahrenheit could potentially kill your yeast, and we don't want that to happen. So anything lower than that would slow the activation of the yeast down, or it might not activate at all on it. So we definitely want to make sure we've got some good healthy yeast before we go through this whole process and find out that the yeast is not alive. So I've got 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Now I buy it in bulk because I make a lot of bread, but if you don't have it in bulk, you can buy the little packs, and the little packets of the instant dry yeast you can get in the store is equivalent to 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. So you can either use the bulk or you can use the little packages. It's the same thing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put this into our water. And then I've got a teaspoon of sugar. Yeast loves sugar, and the yeast will eat up all the sugar in there, and that's going to help it activate a little bit faster also. I'm going to give it just a little bit of stir together, and we'll go ahead and set this to the side. And we want to let this activate between 5 to 10 minutes. And you'll be able to tell pretty quickly whether or not the yeast is going to be alive or not. So I'm going to set this aside and we'll get started on our dry ingredients. So with our dry ingredients now, we're going to start out with 500 grams of bread flour. If you've got bread flour, you definitely want to use that, because we all know that those bagels that you get in the stores or get in the delis and things have that nice chewy texture to it. And that's because of all the extra gluten that you've got in your bread flour. If all you've got is all-purpose flour, you can definitely use that. You just won't get that chewy texture that you will with the bread flour. So if you can find the bread flour, definitely get that. So I've got 3 1/2 cups of bread flour, or 500 grams. And with that, we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I'm going to go ahead and add that into the top now. And then I've got 2 teaspoons of salt. We do not want to put the salt in with our yeast while we're trying to activate that, because salt and the yeast don't get along together when they're in that process. So we want to put our salt into our dry ingredients here. Then I'm just going to take a whisk, and I'm just going to whisk that all together. All right, now that we've got our dry ingredients mixed together, I'm going to go ahead and take my bowl out of my stand mixer, and I'm going to transfer these over to that. If you don't want to use a separate bowl, you don't have to. I just did that to show you what I was doing with that. So we'll go ahead and add all of our dried ingredients to our bowl here. I'm going to put that back in the stand mixer. Now we're going to wait for our yeast to activate, and I'll be back and we'll get started with our kneading process. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can definitely use your 2 hands, and we'll go through that process here in just a minute. Stick with me. All right, I'm back and my yeast has activated. I want you to see what that looks like. That looks like some really nice active yeast. It is ready to go. And then we will move on and put this into our stand mixer. Like I said, if you don't have a stand mixer, you can definitely just mix this together. Just grab your spatula, or you can use your whisk and just mix it together until it comes together, and then start kneading it. You'll need to knead it for 8 minutes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn my stand mixer on low. And I'm going to add my yeast and my water mixture together. All right, as you can see now, our dough has come together, and I'm going to go ahead and set this on level 2 on this stand mixer, and we're going to knead it for 8 minutes. Like I said, if you don't have a stand mixer, you can definitely use your hands and knead this for 8 minutes, and we'll be back to show you what this looks like. All right, it has been 8 minutes now, and I wanted to show you what my dough looks like. As you can see, that we've got a nice dough for our bagels. Let me go ahead and get that cleaned off on the outside there. And then we're going to take just a little bit of the flour, and I'm going to spread this out here on my work surface. And then I'm going to put my dough on it, and we're going to form this into a ball. All right, we've got our dough out on our work area now. I'm just going to kind of turn that over on itself just to kind of get a little bit of flour on both sides. And we just want to kind of roughly form this into a ball. All right, now that we've got that in that shape there, I'm going to take that original bowl that I had, and I'm going to take some of my oil here, and I'm just going to kind of put a light coat on the inside of that pan, because what we don't want this to do when it's rising is we don't want it to stick down to the bowl, because that would keep it from rising. So this kind of helps it along. I'm going to kind of give this a little bit of a smear on the outside of the bowl here. Then we'll take our dough ball and I'm going to put it into our bowl and I'm going to turn it around on both sides just so that I get just a little bit of that oil on both sides of the dough. And that just keeps it from drying out as we get ready for it to rise. All right, now that we've got our dough in our bowl now, I'm going to take some cling film. Now that I've got the cling film on my bowl here, I'm going to put this in my microwave. That just kind of keeps it out of the cool air here, and that way it'll have an opportunity for it to rise. Just set it somewhere so that it's not in a direct air draft. If your room is a little bit warmer, then that's fine then. But I'm making this in summer with the air conditioner running, so I'm going to put this out of the way so that it does rise. So I'm going to let this double in size about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and we'll come back and I'll show you what we're going to do next. All right, now that I've got my dough put away and it is rising, I'm going to go ahead and show you about our cream cheese now. So I have a full 8-ounce box of Philadelphia cream cheese here. You can use any kind of that you like. And I've got it opened up here. This just come out of the refrigerator, so it's not been brought to room temperature or anything. And what we're going to do, we're probably going to use about 3/4 of this, and I'm going to cut these into about little 1/2-inch squares. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a little bit of this here. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to take each one of these and cut these into thirds. So I've got this type of a shape here. We need 12 of these because we're going to be making 12 bagels today. If you want to, you can roll these into a little ball. You can just in your hand. And I've got some freezer paper here on a tray. And I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these. And I need 12 of these. And I'll show you what we'll do next. I did 6 smaller ones and 6 larger ones. That way we can see what it looks like inside the bagel. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this cream cheese back in the refrigerator because we'll probably use this as a smear if we want some more cream cheese on our bagels. All right, now these go into the freezer. So we're going to put these in the freezer and let these freeze up. And we'll let them do that while the dough is rising. And once the dough gets ready to be shaped into our bagels, then I will break these out at the same time and they'll be frozen. So stick with me and we'll move on to the next process. I am back and I've got my dough here. I wanted to show you what that looked like. It's been an hour and a half and our dough has risen nicely on that. So there you go. So now we're going to put this to the side and I'm going to take just a little bit of flour and put this on my workspace here. All right, now that we've got our dough on our workspace, I'm going to take the dough and measure that and weigh it. That way you'll know what it is. So when we get ready to divide it into 12 pieces, you'll know exactly what size we're going to be putting these in. All right, I did measure my dough and it came out to be 878 grams. Or once we divide that into 12, that'll be about 73 grams per one of our bagels, and it's just under 2 pounds. I'll put the breakdown of that in the description box, that way you'll have it so you'll know what it is. All right, so let's go ahead and put this out onto our floured mat here. I'm just going to kind of push it down and I'm going to cover both sides of it. And so now we're going to take it, I'm going to divide this into 12 pieces. So you can just kind of cut it in half, and then we can take that and divide that into 6 pieces each, or we can measure them into 73 grams. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my dough cut up now into about 12 regular pieces, and that was about 2.6 ounces or about 73 grams if you're measuring that way. So now we just want to kind of put these into the shape of a ball and get the outside of those fairly uniform. So I'm just going to kind of pinch the bottom here. I'm going to show you what that is. And then you can take it and just give it a roll between your fingers on the countertop, and that will kind of smooth out that bottom a little bit more. But you can definitely just pinch it with your fingers. All right, so now we've got a nice shape on our bagel, and we've got the bottom kind of nicely shaped on that also. I've got my frozen cream cheese here, remember that. And I'm going to take one of my pieces and I'm just going to kind of push a little bit of an indent here in the middle and just put the piece right here in the middle of it, and then I'm going to pull the dough around it and give it a pinch. And that way that cheese will get sealed inside of the dough. All right, so there's our bagel. We're going to leave it just like that. We've got our cheese inside of it, and we've got a nice shape to our bagel. I'm going to go ahead and set these on this tray. I've got some parchment paper on the tray, that way the bagels won't stick to the pan while they're baking. If you've got one of the Silmat silicone sheets, you could definitely use one of those if you don't have the parchment paper. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to continue to shape the rest of these, and I'll do one more here, making sure we get a nice smooth cover on the outside. Give it a little bit of a roll on the countertop here. And you see how that kind of close that off on the bottom with just your hands. We'll take another one of the pieces of our cream cheese. We're going to push just a little bit in it. We don't want to push it all the way through. And we're just going to kind of pull the dough up around it and pinch. All right, there's the bottom, there's the top. We've got our cream cheese inside of our bagel now. I'm going to put these on this sheet. I'll continue to work on these and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my last bagel done here, and I wanted you to show you what I've got here on my sheet. I'm going to go ahead and get me another one of these pans out and put some more parchment paper on it. That way I won't overcrowd this, because we're going to let this sit on the counter for 30 minutes and we're going to let this rise up just a little bit more. So I'm going to spread this out and put 6 on this one and 6 on another pan. While I've got my bagels resting here on the counter, we want to make sure that we put a towel over the top of them, because we don't want them to dry out. And while they're resting for the next 30 minutes, I've got a Dutch oven here that I've got 12 cups of water in, and I'm going to bring that to a boil right before these are done on their rise. So stick with me and we'll be back in just a minute and we'll show you what the next step is. All right, I am back now. I've got my water boiling, and before I open that up and I get a steam bath here, I've got 1/3 of a cup of honey that I'll be adding into our water. So as soon as we open this up, we're going to add the honey to the top of it. If you want to use brown sugar, you can, or you can use molasses, whatever you like. All right, I've got my honey and my water now. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. That way it's not rolling boiling, but it is hot enough that it's going to do what I need it to do. So the purpose of this now for boiling our bagels is to seal in that outside crust on it, so we get that nice crunch on it that we get from bagels. And I'm going to go ahead and start adding these in. I've got a timer here that I'm going to be setting these to. So you can see these kind of did rise a little bit more. We're not going to be putting any holes in these, because remember, we've got the cheese in them. And I'm going to put these in this water for 1 minute. All right, I'm at 30 seconds now. I'm going to turn these over so that we get the other side cooked the same way. Get some of that sweetness on the top of them. All right, our timer just went off. I'm going to flip these back over one last time, and I'm going to take these out. I'm going to put them back on my sheet here, and now I'm going to continue to do my other 9. You want to make sure that you have these evenly spaced out on your sheet, because this is what you're going to be baking them on in the oven. And while I'm working on this, make sure you have your oven on at 425 already preheated, because once we get through with this, we're going to put these in the oven. I'll be right back. All right, here are my bagels. I wanted to show you what they look like before I put them in the oven. That little bit of cooking on the outside has done its job for what it's going to do now. So we're going to put these in that preheated 425-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 15 minutes. So you might want to start checking on them about 7 minutes. I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn my pan around in the oven. That way, if one side of my oven's cooking faster than the other, they don't get more done on one side than the other. So check on these. Everybody's stove cooks a little bit differently. At about 12 minutes, start checking on them to make sure that they're not getting too brown. But my oven cooks these about 15 minutes. So the middle rack in the oven, I moved it down 1 notch, so it's not quite in the middle. It's down just a little bit from the middle, and that's where we're going to place these in our oven. So I'll be back and I'll show you what these look like. I am back, and I've got both of my batches and my bagels out of the oven now. And I did a little experiment tonight. I wanted to show you something you can do that might pique your interest a little bit. So I took a egg white and I put just a smidge of water in it, and I took a brush and I brushed the top of these. So these do not have the egg wash on the top, and these do. It didn't really affect the browning of them at all, but you can see these have really a nice shiny coat on the top of them. So if that's something that appeals to you, you can definitely take an egg white and put a little bit of water in it, and then brush it on the top and the sides, and that'll give you a nice glossy look to your bagels. So let's get into this and see what this tastes like. So I'm going to take one of these that's been sitting here cool, and I'm going to break these open. We got that nice bagel-y taste, and you can see that cheese on the inside. It's all intact where it is, and we've got a nice cook on our bagels. So if you wanted to put just a little bit more cream cheese in it, you could. This side over here had the smaller of the cream cheeses in it, so you can definitely put just a little bit more in it, and try that if you like a little bit more cream cheese in it. So let's give this a try. That is absolutely delicious. You get that nice bagel taste, and you've got that cream cheese already set up in there for you without having to put a smear on the outside of it. You can get as creative with this as you like. If you like to mix a little bit of chives in your cream cheese, you can definitely put that in here as well. So it's numerous what you can do with these. You might try a little bit of cheese in them, just regular cheddar cheese mixed in with it. That would be really good too. I hope this has inspired you to try some of these cream cheese filled bagels. And if you like this content, maybe you might consider giving me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And definitely check out one of these other two videos over here. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And try these cream cheese filled bagels. I know you're going to love them. Bye-bye now. Delicious.